The Opinion with Michael J. We're going to start off with a panelist stuns CBC host David Cochran. Say what? Say yes. Here we go. Society Unveiled, the name of the channel. Got a lot of subscribers. Posted this a day ago, 29,000 views after one day. Lisa Raitt was on Power and Politics with David Cochran and called him out in the blatant copying of the Conservative Party by the carney liberals. That's the description. Look at the comments. David should be fired. Why does everybody want to friggin' fire everybody all the time? I don't get it. Is this a Trump thing? Lisa Raitt was one of the best MPs. Respect. Well, I've got contradictory evidence, just based on actual experience, that actually disputes. She tried her best. She's actually better now than when she was an MP. And that's just my opinion. Now, David Cochran loves Mark Carney. Geez, this guy's a liberal bag licker. Oh, boy. These posters are the most sensitive people, aren't they? Not caustic, not insensitive, but the most sensitive. David Cockroach. Why do we have to talk to people about people like that? Worried about saving his own miserable job. Nothing else. What a grifter. I don't know. You ever see what that Donald Trump's been doing? As a matter of fact, you ever actually see what this Pierre Poilievre's been doing? His campaigning, April 28th, his change video. It was blatant out, no lies. Unbelievable. And you buy this stuff. David Cochran is such a woke leftist liar. Like, that really is not necessary. And this thing about woke, you know, it was like Nazis creating a fascist movement. Woke is just compassion and benevolence. But it's been created into something it's not. Because people cannot accept other people's viewpoints, and that's the real issue. So let's look at this here now. Well, we can. There we go. You guys ready? You guys ready?
And they want to help with the cost of living, right? And housing being a big part of that. That right there tells me what the core priorities of his cabinet would be.
It's a conservative platform.
Well, yes.
Holy smokes, it's a conservative platform, and it's even here in big white letters. She spoke so profoundly that the videographer here had to say it's the conservative platform. Well, I never realized, or did realize, that using policy to tackle affordability and housing issues has a patent pending or a copyright in favor of the conservatives. Color me Michael, but I just never realized that. But I'm going to just take, I'm just going to throw it right back. And I just never understood why the conservatives would be so proud of the fact of they created the affordability and housing platform. We know it's a conservative platform. The affordability issue and the housing issue is a conservative platform. You guys created it. What do you think of that? Never thought that could happen, eh? But that's how you actually deal with other people. You don't try to fix things. You just fight wars. And that was apparent in Pierre Poilievre's statement the day that Carney actually finished getting his cabinet sworn in, Pierre Poilievre spent the last half hour just berating people. Just back to old way. Just the old way. And that old way got him kicked out of Carleton riding, of his riding in Ottawa for 20 years, totally rebuked, lost by over 4,300 votes. But because of the division he sowed, the Conservatives want to keep him as leader because they see how that Trumpyism works in Canada, and they did the best they did with the electorate. Split Canada in two, nearly wiped out the NDP because of it. They'll slag the NDP, they'll slag the Bloc, because that's what they do. They just slag people. But the real issue is because of the Conservative threat, because of the threat of the platform of Pierre Poilievre. That's the real issue. So let's listen to what this gentleman here has to say.
Platform.
Well, yes.
You know what? It's about time I had something a little bit refreshing to report from the CBC. Lisa Raitt, who's a former Canadian politician who served as a federal cabinet minister and an MP from 2008 to 2019, she pushes back against the ridiculous, radical, anti-oil agenda that Mark Carney has for Canada, and she does it in a very eloquent way. So I hope that the regular viewers of the CBC were really paying attention to this part and not rolling their eyes, because
well, that's a false narrative. And to paint Mark Carney as anti-oil is a false narrative also. Like, he didn't say when he's campaigning, I'm anti-oil, did he? I'm anti-oil, did he? I'm anti-oil, did he? No, he did not. So, another typical conservative thing where they're going to say, punishing ordinary Canadians. Watch it.
it truly shows what our government is all about. Punishing ordinary Canadians.
There
like
we go. There we go. This is what the government's all about. Punishing ordinary Canadians. Now, really? You know what? That punishing ordinary Canadians is a construct of conservatism and their followers. Because based on the comments, all you see is caustic, insensitive remarks that serve no one, but they buy into it. And let's follow more of the...
Lisa, is all of this just the death of the idea of collective action in Canada? Like, when the economy is bad, you can't have an environmental agenda because it's too expensive and it slows growth. And if the economy is good, oh, you can't do that. You're going to stop the good times. You know, there's always an argument not to do this, and yet, you know, the physics of the environment, they don't care.
Well, name me another country in the world that's having a conversation about whether or not we should export natural gas to India and China unless India and China can prove that they're displacing coal.
That's a false narrative. And that's what everybody falls back on. And that's disingenuous at best. And here's the deal. Canadians don't have to be like that. We can be leaders. We don't have to be followers, because the oil money, especially when you understand the Western Texas Intermediate crude, you know, it varies in price, goes within the past week $59 to $63 a barrel U.S. Meanwhile, the cheapest way you can get that bitumen out of the oil sands in Alberta, $57 U.S. You use conventional mining methods, it's over $80 U.S. Also, if you've noticed how long it takes a pipeline to go from coast to coast, first of all, Quebec is going to be a problem. So why waste time with problems? You can work on that slowly if need be, because these pipelines take a long time. You go westbound. Now, The question is, here we are already, what is it, 14th? So it's only been just over 2 weeks that you've had a new government in place. It's only just one day after they finally just put their cabinet together. Like, these things take a little bit of time, but already you're talking, you got Alberta making inroads to separating. But why has not Alberta spoken to Saskatchewan, spoken to British Columbia, and said, what can we do to get a pipeline going here, guys? Now, instead they're crying wolf, woe be me, and not taking any initiative to try to get something happening. Now, you have to understand, during the whole tenor of Stephen Harper and Pierre Poilievre, what pipelines did they build going to the East Coast and the West Coast? El Zippo. Housing? El Zippo. Because everything they do is back-end loaded. And this is the difference between the Liberals and the Conservatives, even in policy. You claim that the Liberals are just copying the Conservatives, but no. I'll tell you, the tax relief Pierre Poilievre was talking about, it's all back-end loaded at the end of 4 years. That's not the way Carney was doing that. Totally different. So let's follow Miss Rate here.
I can tell you the answer to that, not a single one. And maybe in 2015, when everybody signed on to what we wanted to do in terms of targets,
right,
maybe that was the Pollyannish view on it. But
screw that Pollyannish view. That doesn't work with me, and I'll tell you why. November 2015, Trudeau won the election. December 2015 started the initial stages of building a pipeline, an LNG pipeline that went from Saskatchewan to BC. Just recently got completed. What is it, 2025 now? Recently got completed. Now they're just testing it with some incoming freighters to make sure that it works. So it's taken a long time for that to come into play.
But it ain't that way now, because no one else has
It ain't
bellied
that
up to
way
the
now.
bar in order to do those kinds of things. Canada, yes, we are out in front. We are out ahead on these matters. But for us to start fretting about whether or not we're going to be able to hold up these unrealistic targets that nobody else in the world is actually trying to implement, and put our own economy and our own unity in play as a result of that, well, I think we had our way.
Right. Unity? Who's pulling the unity card? That's a construct created by Miss Danielle Smith. It's been brewing there for a while. And you really have to ask the question, why is Preston Manning, he's still there in Alberta, he even spoke about, looks like Liberals might win the election, talk about separation as soon as he could. Stephen Harper embraces Pierre Poilievre, says, vote Pierre Poilievre. He's the best man for the job. Pierre Poilievre loses his friggin' riding. Imagine that. Poilievre loses, Jagmeet Singh loses. There's a telling story there, right as it is. Nonetheless, where does he go to get a seat, Pierre Poilievre? Alberta. Alberta, a place that's trying to separate. Now we have to ask the other question, how come Alberta, with about 4.7 or 4.9 million people, are controlling or trying to control the majority of Canada? There's something seriously wrong there. This is for another topic, but this really, nobody's looking at it from that point of view. The small little sliver of land is trying to divide Canada, hasn't even got 5 million people in its population. You'll find that Albertans that go to Ontario say, well, this Ontario is not all that great. I was better off in Alberta, and they go back to Alberta, but yet Alberta says, I'm hard done by. I'm hard done by more than any other province here. So these are constructs that are created by the mind, by the people, to give meaning to their lives instead of just living lives as best they can and uniting with the country and doing the best we can to make this a better country. And I'm just putting it to you the way I see it.
Wake-up call in the election. Brad is right. Canadians overwhelmingly said that this is the direction they wanted to go in. They want to have the economy doing well. And I would also point out from an NDP point of view, look at what Premier Canoe is doing. I mean, he's talking about this as well in terms of wanting to make sure we're moving energy. So I don't think we should be hand-wringing about what Mark Carney is going to do or not going to do and how can he backtrack and what his reputation means. I think it's all over. I think the man's got to order to have pipelines in order to move our energy in this country and believe that we can do it safely and environmentally aware. I believe we can do it, so he should make sure he does that. That's all. Simple.
There you go.
While Mark Carney is busy talking about how he's got this elbows-up approach to make Canada a much better place, Donald Trump is out there getting the job done and growing.
Donald Trump is getting the job done? What Kool-Aid are you drinking, buddy? Holy crap.
His economy. Sure, he's not doing it in the most ethical way, and he's not making himself look very good on the world stage, but at the same time, people take him seriously when he talks. People do not take Mark Carney seriously. They look at him like a weak leader. That's why...
Oh, so you like criminals. You like people that are criminals. You like people that act like fascist autocrats. And you think that's something for your kids to look up to. Whoa. That's a dangerous route to travel on, buddy. But that's the route that the Conservative Party and their followers are basically taking. You're just saying it yourselves.
Donald Trump wanted Mark Carney in there to begin with. Mark Carney is against us exporting oil. In North America, the United States is now the superpower who's exporting the oil.
If you really know what's going on, the United States is a declining superpower, and they're worried about China taking their seat at the superpower, only one superpower at a time, I guess, eh? So, let's be honest. Ever since Reagan in 1985, the United States has been slowly declining as a superpower, and why? A lot of it has to do with their deficits as a result of Republican conservative ideologies and tax cuts that have created this deficit that is getting out of control. That's only part of the problem.
Not Canada. All right, I'll end it off with this clip here. Just have a listen and enjoy.
But to go back to his priorities, Vanda, that Friday press conference that Mark Carney gave, and in the first couple of sentences said, to deal with the U.S., to grow the economy, and people also want safer communities, and they want help with the cost of living, right? And housing being a big part of that. That right there tells me what the core priorities of his cabinet would be.
It's a conservative platform.
Well, yes. Well, we'll see.
Obviously. How do you think Mark Carney won the election, aside from cheating? Well, he based...
Aside from cheating? You're just cheating yourself and your viewers by saying that he's cheating. It's really not a good position to take. It's not an arrow you want to sling because it comes back to you. Kind of like those Australian things they call a boomerang. That casts it out comes back to hit you.
Basically copied Pierre Poilievre's platform to a T. At every turn, he was right there poaching ideas from Pierre.
No, and I'm glad he's not even doing anything like what Pierre Poilievre did, because that'd be a disaster for the country. And I believe it. And I stand by my words. Now we're going to pivot right now to somebody who knows a little bit about a guy by the name of Donald Trump. A guy by the name of David Frum, knew his mom, knew of his dad through my father-in-law.
That it has been needed in the past days, which I call the week of the 4 scams. Over these past few days, Donald Trump has taken credit or introduced one after another piece of outrageous fiction, which he is presenting to the world as some tremendous achievement. And we need to be warned against it and to protect ourselves against it. Now, the first of the scams will supply the matter of my main conversation in the program today. And that is Donald Trump's attempt to take credit for the India-Pakistan ceasefire. The India-Pakistan ceasefire is a real event. It actually happened. But Donald Trump's role in it was negligible, to say the least, as you will hear when I speak to my guest today, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, who is chairman of the External Affairs Committee in the Indian Parliament and one of that country's leading voices for liberal and humane values. But now let's talk, in the interval, about the three scams that took place here at home, on the home front. Two of them are the so-called trade deals that Trump has taken credit for, one with Britain, one with China. Now, these aren't deals in any traditional sense of the word. A trade agreement must be approved by Congress. It's a treaty. And these are executive announcements, PR press releases, concepts, plans, projects, noise. They don't amount to anything. Today, in May, American tariffs are dramatically higher than they were the day before Donald Trump took office. And the effort to make them scale up and to scale down is just a distraction, the way the dealer in a three-card Monte game keeps up a line of patter so that you don't notice that you're being deceived and robbed. The fourth of the scams is the Donald Trump's project to accept from the Emirate of Qatar the personal gift of a jet plane that would accrue to him personally during his time as president, and that would then be kept by him and by his heirs through the guise of the Trump library and casino and fast food restaurant or whatever he calls it, but nothing that is going to be like any kind of charity. And it looks like the plane will keep operating and be available to him and to his family for use afterwards. It is the most astonishing act of brazen corruption in the history of the American presidency, in the history of many post-Soviet presidencies. I mean, it's un-American. It can't be compared to anything that has ever happened in American history. And it comes on top of the flow of funds to Donald Trump from all over the world via these strange meme coins that he keeps issuing, that someone is buying for no obvious business reason, but as a way to direct funds to the pockets of the president. Let's talk a little bit more about these two trade deals, because there's going to be an enormous attempt to make them seem real. You know, in a three-card Monte game, and as well as the dealer, there are often people in the crowd who are there to back up the dealer's stories, to nudge people away from the tables if they look too closely, and to entrap victims. And a lot of the pro-Trump media plays the role of these kinds of ropers and bumpers, as they're called. But those, even in the independent media, we're not really very good at saying, this thing the president said, it doesn't mean anything. All that is happening here is the construction of a new apparatus of taxation that is imposed by the president at the president's discretion, that can be exempted by the president to people who give him favors if they can, or in exchange for various kinds of benefits, all of which is to shift the burden of taxation in the country from those best positioned to pay to those least positioned to pay. In swirling around all of this commotion, all of this noise, is massive amounts of insider trading. We've had volatility unlike anything seen in financial markets since the great crisis of 2008, 2009. And people who study the markets notice a lot of short selling and a lot of rapid buying just before and just the president makes major moves, as if important market players have been tipped off and are making bets in the trillions on which they're reaping profits in the hundreds of billions. It is just an astonishing thing that is happening. Meanwhile, what the central act is the movement of taxation, because tariffs are taxes, from those best positioned to pay to those least positioned to pay. A tariff is a tax on goods. It is a tax. It is a tax that falls on the consumer of those goods, and it is a tax on the consumer of anything that has any kind of imported component in it. Now, maybe a way to think about this is imagine a poor family eating a meal at home. Their table is tariffed. Their chairs are tariffed. The plates are tariffed. The knives and forks are tariffed. If they're having a frugal meal of pasta or spaghetti, the Canadian wheat that probably is the major ingredient in that pasta, that's tariffed too. Now imagine a wealthier family enjoying a meal in a restaurant, perhaps to celebrate the enormous reduction in their taxes that they're going to get as a result of the Trump tax deal. Now, their tables and their chairs and so forth, the knives and forks, they might be tariffed too, although they probably come from Europe rather than China, so they'll be tariffed at a lower rate. But the most important cost in a restaurant meal is not the plate, not the chair, not the table, not the knife and fork, not even the food. The most important expense are the wages of the chef, the wages of the server, and the rent on the space in which which the restaurant is located. None of those things are tariffed. They are services, not goods, and so they escape the tax entirely. Richer people tend to spend more of their income on services than they do on goods. Poor people spend more on goods than on services. And richer people, of course, can save and invest more of their income, and that escapes tariffs entirely. So the more of the income you spend on the services, the less you pay in tariffs. The working man's car, that's tariffed. The rich man's chauffeur, not tariffed. The poor girl's dolls, which she's allowed so few by the Trump administration, those are tariffed. When the rich family hires a nanny to play dolls with the girl, the nanny salary is not tariffed. Towels are tariffed. Membership in a swimming club, which you use the towel, that's not tariffed. The doorknob is tariffed, but the doorman on Fifth Avenue, no tariff on him. It is very important when you listen to the Donald Trump show to keep your eye not on the game, but on the players and what they're about. And this jet story, this jet scam, is maybe the most revealing thing of all. It is just beyond shameful that such an offer would even get 2 minutes of consideration. Look, foreign governments, authoritarian governments, especially those like Qatar, which have these bad ties to Hamas and Iran and which are trying to buy favor in the United States, they're always approaching people. There's a whole apparatus of distance to keep things like that away from the president. The president doesn't normally say no. The president normally never even learns that the offer was made in the first place. But in this case, there are no guardrails and no protections. And so in our fourth scam, the offer comes to the president. And the president wants to say yes. Now, he may ultimately not be able to say yes. The gift of a jet to the president of the United States personally from a foreign emirate, that may be too much even for Trump's usual
It's
apologies.
unprecedented.
But look how far we've come. Look how low we've sunk.
Look how low we've sunk, and you just say you seem to accept it. You seem to think it's all right. Damn. It's how 1930s Germany all of a sudden creeped up on the people before it was too late. They had a whole movement going, couldn't do anything about it. Even in the UK, Brexit, David Cameron did a move like Danielle Smith, trying to play politics, and it backfired on him. And look what it did for the UK. Had to get out of Brexit. So you really don't know what's going on. You think you know what's going on, but all you're doing is doing things that hurt people, create pain and suffering. So you got to get away from the pain and suffering and do things that provide benevolence, compassion, and abundance for everybody. So you got to make a choice here, kids. Phone? Post in the comments section. Try to keep it civil, please. Questions, comments, greatly appreciated. Love and peace to everybody. Take care. Talk to you all soon. Ciao for now.